Welcome to the FatherGood podcast. I'm here with Shay Robbins today. And Shay, the dreaded question, if you were in an elevator with someone or maybe sat down across from someone for the first time and they said, "Who is Shay Robbins?" What would you tell them?
My name is Shay Robbins. I'm a follower of Jesus. I am married to Ashley Robbins, my best friend. We've been working on it for 19 years. We have 6 awesome kids they're amazing kids, but they stretch us in every way. And they're at the same time the best thing we got going. I am a passionate follower of Jesus because he radically transformed my life. Grew up in a Christian home, strayed, wandered, had an amazing grace moment that changed me forever. And I've not been perfect since, but I've been unrelenting in my pursuit of a relationship with Jesus. So I put all my chips on the table. I'm all in. I was a longtime ministry guy and transitioned into business. I love pastoral care and capitalism, and I get to do them both at the same time and really get a kick out of it. I have grown to become a savage protector of people and taking care of people. I wasn't always that way, but God gave me 5 daughters.
Yeah.
And 1 son to teach me how to do that and to grow in that way. And so that's become a big part of who I am. And I feel like every year that goes by, I grow in that. Everything else on the side, I just trying to sharpen my axe and stay efficient and excellent with the gifts that God has given me to serve his kingdom.
Wow. Well, if I was in an elevator and I heard that, I'd be like, I got to know more. So I don't know. This is great. Yeah. So many things you said there that I want to dig in on. But as I kind of prepare for, obviously, if you're sitting across from me, you mean something to me in my life on this podcast. And when I thought of you specifically, I thought of storyteller and someone that keeps it real. Like, you've always just been a breath of fresh air for me because you're never like, I got to turn it on. You've just been, this is who I am. And in a sense, it's almost unapologetic of like, this is the real deal. And so I love that. I'm curious, whenever you say that you've become a savage protector of people, I want to just see that play out a little bit. What do you mean by savage protector of people? How does that, not only your daughters come into that equation, but I would imagine that's for people that you kind of run with.
Yeah. Well, Lena, I've always, and this is kind of a Robbins trait, I've just always been a fighter. And, for so many years, there's a decade of my life that I think about where I was just literally fighting for myself,
Mm.
Fighting for accomplishments and recognition and popularity and achievements and glory and all that. And just over the years, God has softened me up and taken that design, because I really believe it's from him. And it's a little bit unique. I coached Pee Wee football for years, and there's certain kids that like contact and there's certain kids that don't.
Yeah.
There's some kids that are made to play football and there's some kids that aren't.
Yeah.
There's no right or wrong in it. It's just design. And I know that part of my design is to be a fighter. And now over the years, God has used probably the things that have grown me as a leader have been circumstances that have softened me. And in that softening, I had a season where I went from working with teenage boys to working with elementary kids. And all the people that God called to take care of elementary kids, and that softened me up. It was a wake-up call. And over the years, again, having 5 daughters, my son and I live in a cloud of estrogen. And we have been softened up.
Yeah.
And, I look back at a lot of the mistakes that I've made over the years, and many of them is just me being hard on people.
Yeah.
And and God has softened me up. And what I found is, as I have softened up, I become a better leader. I become more of a protector and a guardian with that strength and that fight. And Pastor Ted, frankly, is just beat the drum of pastoral care.
Yeah.
And I really have taken that on and found just a ton of joy and purpose in it.
Wow. That's it's actually so neat to hear because Aspen and I were just talking the other night about like how do you start to recognize attributes and traits in your kiddos
Yeah.
that other people might be like, "Oh, he's too aggressive or too risky," or, "He doesn't have fear in his body." And what if we actually learn to, like, celebrate those and bring out the good in them rather than just, like, stifle it out? So, Shep, like,
Yeah.
but that was the conversation we were having the other night. It's like, we don't want him to just like sit on his hands and learn to control all of this in a way that's just like, that's what society says. We want to actually celebrate. I love what I see in you. Let's learn to channel that into a better, vehicle. And so hearing you say that God, put that in you to be a fighter, and then I've got to now figure out, he's entrusted me with that. How do I figure out how that plays out in my life? And what a unique challenge as parents to figure out how to do that for your kids.
100%. And that's the greatest joy of being a parent,
Yeah.
because you're on this journey of discovery and to discover, how did God design this child?
Mhm.
And as a steward of this child, and this is one of Ashley and I's prayer every night, Lord, help me to be the best parent I can be for this kid.
Wow.
Um, because his design is unique and to be celebrated, and we get to discover it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's neat. Is you said 4 girls and
Five
or
girls,
5
one
girls
son.
and 1 son. So are your kiddos vastly different, from one another to where you realize that you've had to call out certain strengths in one where it's clearly not in the other and vice
100%.
versa? Maybe chat about that for just a second.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they're all unique and different. The fun part is that they're all Robins, and there's a certain culture in the Robbins home, and there is a nurture piece of it that they take on, and we like that. We're purposeful about creating culture in the home, but at the same time, there's so much that you cannot control as a
Yeah.
parent. And again, going back to the coaching illustration, so many of those kids that, are playing football that really are not designed for it and they really don't love it, like they're actually running from contact. It's because they have a parent that's pushing them down a lane that they're not made for.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, man, this kid, like, he's brilliant, he's amazing, he's quirky, he's unique. And right now we're missing it. How do we draw out? I mean, I'm thinking of one particular kid who he would give our pump up speeches. He's a horrible football player, but he was phenomenal hype man, right? So
That's awesome.
you just got to just find that in them and draw it out and celebrate it. And so it is with our kids. Like, they're all unique, and frankly, we love who they are,
Yeah.
and we love those differences.
Yeah. That's something funny to think about just as, like, you're I think Asper and I have been a little bit cautious now that Banner's getting older and his personality, it's like, wow, we thought we had it figured out because we were finally getting Shep's personality, like, to where we understood it and rhythms and routines, what works for him, what doesn't. And it's like, Banner might be completely different, and we get to start all over from scratch. And so you doing that 6 different times with your kiddos, is just a challenge for me to accept to say, "Shay's done this well, I can I can do this well as well." So
Well, let me just throw in one more
yeah.
thought on that. We have been surprised by our kids, thinking, as a 3 or 4 or 5-year-old, like, okay, I see where they're going.
Mhm.
And we've been completely caught off guard
Yeah.
by some kids in the way that they've matured to say, oh my gosh, like, I totally missed it.
Yeah.
That was a season,
Yeah.
so it's a moving target. You're just constantly learning.
Yeah. and you've got to continue showing up to be the parent that they need
Yeah,
in whatever season that they're in.
absolutely.
So I wasn't thinking about this and wasn't planning on saying this until I was setting up for the podcast in this room. But my first ever interaction with you was in this room. And I
It
don't know.
was.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember that or not,
I
but
do remember it.
it's, yeah, we were actually flipped. I was sitting right there, you're sitting right there, and you just asked me a question. You go, "What are you passionate about?"
Yep.
Like, that was your opening line, and I'll never forget that. You obviously were on the teaching team and still are on the teaching team at the church, but I had just kind of moved here and was trying to find my footing in Branson and
Yeah.
what it meant for me as a newly married man, and, you just have a gift of, like, you immediately wanted to not get to know the surface level version of Lane. You wanted to know who I was, what I was passionate about, and now that I think about it, you were constantly just like, "Okay, noticing this and taking this, and you should pursue that," or, "Why are you doing this?" And that was such a helpful relationship for me to have in my first few months here in Branson, and just wanna say thank you, I guess, for, if nothing else, just having a genuine conversation that got the ball rolling for what am I passionate about? What am I gonna be about as a new husband and now as a father? So,
Well,
pretty
you're an interesting guy, Lane. I mean, again, when we just think in terms of God's creation and how he makes everybody unique. I mean, you're the only Lane McCandless in human history. You're just and the same thing with our wife and our kids.
Mhm.
When we think of it in those terms of discovery, it's easy to it only makes sense to ask questions
Yeah,
and ones that matter.
yeah, yeah. I also had the opportunity to sit under your leadership at, I think it was the fort at the time, in the chapel at Woodland Hills just as a college student, and so one of the things that for those listening, Shay's had this background of ministry as well, and you were at camp for a little bit, you were at, Woodland, you're still at Woodland, but now you also mentioned in your little elevator pitch that you also love capitalism.
Love
So,
it.
I would love to hear, because there's so many young fathers listening to this, trying to figure out, "Okay, I kind of know my passions, kind of know what I'm good at. I also know what I'm bad at, but I have no idea how God is working this together. It seems like a jumbled mess." And so maybe you could speak about the clarity that you got at different points in your life to know that I do need to be doing this, but I also can be passionate about this. Kind of like the both and dynamic.
Well, number one, be patient with yourself, knowing that this is a process. In the words of Nick Saban, trust the process. And if you're willing to walk with Jesus, he's going to grow you up.
Mhm.
And, Paul wrote to Timothy and he said, do not neglect the spiritual gift that is within you. It says, take pains in these things, be absorbed in them, that your growth in the faith may be evident to all. And what I realized early on is that, I had a gift of leadership. And when I discovered that gift in humility, I realized at different points, wow, I'm not as good of a leader as I thought I was. And the same thing with being a communicator. I think I thought I was, just in my pride, like, oh, I hit it out of the park. But if you're willing to sit down and take some feedback, you realize, oh, I'm not as good as I thought I was. And years ago, a mentor grabbed me and said, I was just asking him about being a professional communicator and, what it looked like to be excellent at that. And he said, Shay, there's a lot of lazy communicators out there. And the point he was making is, yeah, you got a gift, but you got to work at it.
Mhm.
You got to grow. You got to be sharpened. You got to take feedback. You have to take criticism. You need to observe. You need to practice. You need to take humble audiences and settings. And so to the guy out there that's like juggling all these thoughts and, trying to find himself, what I would just say is spend time with the things that fire you up and that you seem to have a knack for,
Mhm.
and get better at them.
Yeah.
Become a master of that thing. And then ultimately what happens is when you master something, all of a sudden you create value for others and the opportunities come to you.
Yeah. That's it's a good note for people that not to have a spirit of entitlement for, oh, I'm naturally good at this. So, and I think that unfortunately sometimes whether, I mean, we've been using that athletes analogy with coaching, but whether they were just the natural born athlete to where they didn't have to try too hard
Right.
and they landed varsity their first year. And then if you take that spirit of entitlement and never correct it as you get into adulthood, when things don't fall in your lap, you kind of throw your hands up and they're like, what's going on? And
Right.
this isn't fair. But I think the challenge of the verbiage I use is becoming the best version of yourself every day, but encouraging guys and gals that are listening to this, like if you find what you're passionate about and commit to a high level of excellence in doing it, and I think that you would agree with this. God also calls us to a high level of excellence. He did not give you those gifts for you to coast. He did not
Right.
give you those gifts and abilities so that you could just take it easy. Like he's given you those so that you can utilize those to the best of your abilities. And he also needs you to continue to rely on him even after you've quote unquote mastered it because he's the one that gave you the gift. And so I think people fall into one of two categories. They either coast too early or they get so arrogant in their gift that they forget where it came from. Um,
100%. Well, speaking in terms of capitalism, you invest in your gift or your talent, and then you invest in others using that gift or talent
mhm,
for a lifetime.
yeah. I've been, the illustration that comes to mind right now is I was reading a book by Ryan Holiday, and he talks about the coaching tree of greatness, and he was talking about, like, fantastic coaches, and there's 2 different types of coaches. There's the coaches that go on to coach the championship team, and maybe it's kind of like the one hit wonder or they had a good run with them versus the coaches that ended up making future coaches that
Right.
coached NBA teams or
Absolutely.
future championship teams. And you would always rather be the latter. You need to be the person that is investing into the person that changes the world. And
Mhm.
actually, this past Sunday message, Pastor Ted talked about that a little bit of just like the the man who was faithful in making 2 seats for 2 boys at a tent revival, 100 years ago, ended up opening up a seat for Billy Graham, who
Right.
went on to change hundreds and thousands of lives.
Mm.
And so, be faithful with what God has entrusted to you.
Absolutely.
And, I would love for you to just chat about once you found out what you were passionate about. Obviously, those attributes that we talked about at the beginning of being a guardian and strength and protector of others, you were in the camp setting for quite a long time and, had some pretty cool opportunities there to lead people. Now you're in more of a what you would consider capitalism, business, financial setting. Um, what made you take that jump, and what has the Lord taught you in the midst of taking that step of faith?
So much. The jump was just a season of prayer. And, we came out of another camp summer and spent time in praying, saying, God, it's like the re-up prayer
Yeah.
in this a couple years ago, but he surprised us. And my wife saw it coming. I did not. Totally caught me off guard. Um, and so, I always talk about going on an adventure with God, and he surprised us. It was time to go on another adventure. And the scary thing in your mid 40s is I had mastered a career
Mhm.
and really knew all the places I could breathe and that were comfortable and had earned plenty of respect and knew what I was doing. And part of the adventure was walking away from all that,
Mhm.
basically from 2 decades worth of work and relationships and, had absolute clarity on the calling. Uh, so we had the courage to do it and the conviction to do it, but that didn't mean it was easy and still isn't easy. I mean, there's plenty of struggles, but just it was another season of humility and dependence on him. And so I think, even as I get older, God continues to want to grow me up and to soften me up and for me to become even more so dependent on him.
Mhm.
And that comes in the form of challenges.
That's a great thought for guys right there. God continues to grow me up and challenge me, or God continues to grow me up, and it happens in the challenges.
Sure.
And so much of our culture is avoid those challenges.
Yeah. And admittedly, that's my nature too.
Yeah.
Even I think in everybody's career, for example, they're seeking success so that they can be comfortable, right? That's just the ultimate human pursuit.
Mhm.
And God doesn't want us to be comfortable because when we're comfortable, we don't need him. So there's always going to be something that's grating on you,
Mhm.
whether it's marriage, family, relationships, business, you know, economy, it could be any number of things.
Mm. I heard a influencer that I followed the other day said, "I've convinced myself that the challenging times are the good times in life." And he was meaning it from like just a switch in his brain that if something's challenging, this is a good time. But I think to play your scenario out, if it's a challenging time, just understanding God's doing something in me. Like,
Yeah.
God, this is an opportunity for God to grow my character, rather than how do I get this as far away from me as possible.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, our family, when we go on vacations, we like to climb mountains. And climbing mountains is hard, but it's ultra satisfying. The memories are phenomenal. You
Yeah.
get to the top and enjoy the moment at the top, but ultimately, we don't hang around at the top very long. Turn around and head back down
Yep.
and go find another mountain to climb. And um, I think if you're going to live an adventurous life, there's going to be a lot of challenges. There's going to be a lot of mountains to
Mhm.
climb.
Yeah. I love that. We were, talking the other day, and Aspen and I, the footnote here is just that I think God does more in the day-to-day than we think. Like, we think that there's these, like, mountaintop moments or valley moments that we're talking about where that's where God really works. And I think he works in the day to day of you just being faithful. And we were talking to Shep. We finally had a Saturday with no plans. And so Aspen and I wake up, and what do we naturally do? What are we gonna do today? Let's fill our calendar. Like, the world is ours. We can do whatever we want. And we are kind of excited about that. And we run up to Shep after he wakes up, and we're like, Shep, what do you want to do today? And he's like, I want to hang with you and mom and Banner at home. And, we did, and
Yeah.
we asked him, and he's been telling everybody about that day, and here we are,
Interesting.
"Let's go to Silver Dollar City, let's go to
Yeah.
Whitewater, let's go to." That's the day he's been talking about the most, which for me as a dad, I'm also realizing that, like, God wants my day to day. Like, he wants to be in my day to day moments, and who am I to try to have these mountaintop or valley moments with God to where I talk to him when I hit rock bottom, or I talk to him when I'm on a spiritual high, or he only wants me whenever I'm, buttoned up. And I know all that. We live in the ministry world, and I know it, but like, what the amount of things that God has revealed to me through my son about his relationship with me as my heavenly father has just been so humbling. But I love that, your illustration too, just about the journey itself is more producing than necessarily just arriving at the top. God is working behind the scenes. He's working on the hike. He's working in every season of every step. So,
To add to that thought, Lane, Knox and I were really blessed. Last week we got to go on a whitewater rafting trip with a bunch of fathers and sons, and it was like a 4-day trip, 3 nights, camping out on the side of the Green River in
it's fun.
Utah. I mean, it was absolutely an incredible experience. But one night I just asked Knox and another father and son team, um, we asked the boys, how do you feel love? Like, how do I make you feel loved, or what do I do that makes you feel loved? And Knox sat there and he thought about it, and I mean, he's 12 years old, and he just said, your presence, just being there, being with me,
Yeah.
being in the stands at my games, doing stuff like this, just presence. And, we know that our earthly relationships reflect our heavenly relationship. And it just comes down to, the quality of our human relationships is presence
Mm-hmm.
and sharing life. And it's the same with our relationship with God. He's our Father, and He just wants us to be present every day.
Yep. I have a blunt question for you, and if you don't want to answer it, I'll edit it out. But I think the thing that I'm struggling the most in fatherhood with is like I love to be present with there's nothing more fulfilling for me than being with my wife and kids, like hands down. If you ask me what I want to do in my free time, hang out with them. I genuinely enjoy them, and I understand what a privilege that is because some people cannot say that. But I also value hard work. I like building things. I like doing stuff like this. And I still have not mastered the tension of like I'm going some I'm working hard, but not at the expense of not being present for my kids. And so I don't even like using the word like work-life balance because I get that looks different in every season. But I don't know how to get over the dad guilt that I feel sometimes by like saying yes to other opportunities. I don't know if you have any advice just on that, but like, how do you, and maybe once they're in school, it helps a little bit, but if they're at home and they're just hanging out, like, I just have this desire, like, I want to be with him.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I don't know if you have any advice on what that's looked like so that your kids know that they are your priority and your wife knows that she is your priority, but that also, like, you need to model hard work and excellence for them.
Yeah, I give pause to answer because I think I'm like constantly recalibrating
Mm,
because I've erred one way or the other. And I mean, you think about championship teams call a lot of timeouts, and you call timeouts before the game gets away from you. And in the timeout, you rally everybody together, and really a productive timeout is very honest and it's critical. Here's the adjustments that we need to make. And then it's like, everybody put your hand in. 1, 2, 3, let's go, team. And then you get on the court and you just make those adjustments. And so I just feel like we're constantly making adjustments, and we're intentionally trying to call timeout before the game
mhm,
gets away from us. So it's just a Holy Spirit process where you're constantly recalibrating. And, I think as a husband, I've just learned I need to listen to my wife.
mhm.
My wife has been right more than I care to admit. Women just have an innate sense of things. And I think, you're an ambitious guy. Uh, in my 20s and 30s, ambition is probably what caused me to err the most, away from the family. And so, and not that ambition is bad, it's super important and powerful. Um, but I don't know that we did it, have done it super well, but we're working hard at it.
I think I find peace just in the fact that you said you're actively still calling
Oh,
timeouts,
absolutely,
like, right
100%.
now. Because how old's your oldest kiddo?
15.
Okay. So, just the peace of knowing, like, this is like you said, championship teams make adjustments, and it's going to be okay to make adjustments the entire time your kids are under your house, because every season will look different. Um, that's really good. I don't know if you know this or not, but you've preached how many messages do you think you've preached in your life?
Um, I don't know. For some reason, years ago, I counted up the written and delivered over 500 unique messages.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means for like
Yeah.
how many I've given, but this is
That's
a random statistic that's out there.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Well, the reason I bring that up is because I can identify the message that you preach that drastically changed the way that I think of my relationship with God and family. And the coolest part is I ran into someone the other day and we were talking about you. They said, "Do you remember when he preached and said that exact message?" So I just want to share
What
it.
was it?
So it was the message where you talked about we were in a series at church, basically going over protecting the things that matter, and one of the emphasis was your family. And you talked about that you guys were in a season and you felt responsible as the husband and wife. You and Ashley made the decision, like, we're not going to overinvest in sports in this specific season
Yeah.
of our life. And that was the first time. This isn't a knock at other parents, but I had seen so many parents have a reactionary approach to how busy life got, of just like, oh, we're just in this crazy sprint season. And I get that. Like, we've
Yep.
been in a crazy sprint season and we only have 2 kiddos, so I know it'll get crazier from here. But you were the first person I can honestly say that I identified and you said, tap the brakes. We're not doing this. And I was just like, oh, as a husband and father and as a teammates, as husband and wife, like, you can make that decision
Ye
for your family. Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, for those of you listening, Shay and Ashley just went through a season where they told their kids, like, we want you to be active and engaged in stuff that you're passionate about, not at the expense of our family dynamic falling apart. So I think you told them choose one, or like choose one season and we're gonna focus on our family in the next. And maybe I don't know how that story ended, but was that a great decision for your family? Was that a able to come up for air for a season?
It's the right decision. It's not an easy decision.
Mhm.
And we've gone through a lot of seasons. I mean, we kinda had a rule early on where we weren't gonna take on sports until 6th grade. And we held that ground for the first couple girls, and then when Knox gets in 4th grade, he really wanted to play football, and the girls voted for him to play football and to break the family rule.
Yeah.
That was so it did, it lasted a few years, and, I think it was a wise decision, but, I mean, recently told our youngest no to soccer. I don't even think she knows, but somebody was trying to recruit her onto the team, and
Yeah.
again, it's just like it's a hard decision because actually we would really love and get a kick out of watching her play soccer, but we got other kids that are older and that have put time in and discipline and worked hard,
Mhm.
and we're gonna help facilitate their dreams during this season and hold off, so it's like it's constantly a moving target, but saying no to things is healthy,
Mm.
especially when you have a big family, and I'll even say this, Lane, last spring, towards the end of the spring sports season, I was, like, at my max, like, literally ready to snap
Mhm.
because I was working so hard during the day, coming home, and immediately running kids all over the place, going to sports. Weekends were full with sports, and it was too much.
Mhm.
Um, but it's like we chose to have a big family, and we've chose to let them grow up and chase dreams, and so, again, here I am going back to the constant recalibration thing. Um, every season is different, and I think in each season, we need to be discerning and
Mhm.
just ask the Lord, I don't care what other families are doing, what does this family need to do to
Yeah.
be the most healthy?
Yeah. And I think as a husband and a wife, having those conversations for let's tune out the noise for a second. I don't really care who's texted me this or said they're playing this sport or wants my kiddo to be on this team. Like you said, in and of itself, those things are great. And we want our kids to do those, not at the expense of something that you guys recognize as a team. Like, this
Mhm.
will actually be detrimental. But I applaud you and took a mental note of, like, you have that capability as a leader, and God has entrusted you to call those shots. Um, they're not always the most fun decisions to make. As a parent, you wanna be the hero, you don't wanna be the person that says no or lets your kid down, but sometimes no is what's best for them even if they don't see it, and we again, as our Heavenly Father, thank in retrospect, thank Him for not always giving me the desires of my heart because they weren't always best for
Right.
me, and so I just, again, I applaud you for that, and it's something that I've kind of taken a mental checklist of.
Kid, can I say
Yeah,
one more thing to
please
that?
do.
I would just urge, I'm going to speak to the young dads, but I'm sure there's plenty of dads that are older than me um, that would do well, with the adjustment, but just like making sure that family dinners are a part of your rhythm. And, like the specific example you brought up, we went hard for the fall. We said no to everything in winter sports.
Mhm,
And we needed that. And we needed that season where we pumped the brakes, we slowed down, and we had those family dinners. We went on an RV trip, and we made sure we invested in family. And I have never been a bigger proponent of your nuclear family and extended family than
mhm,
I am today. We always say robins stick together. And the truth is, it's like when things go horribly, when you screw up and let everybody down, when you're on your deathbed, it's your family that is there,
yep,
right? It's not all the friends along the way. And sure, there'll be some good friends, but the reality is it's family.
mhm,
It's the way God designed it. And we have to make sure that our family dynamic is healthy and that we are our favorite people. And the only way that you can achieve that is by spending time together.
mm. That's really good. I like the idea of we've tried to be intentional about it early on, but just like we will eat as many family meals around this table as possible.
Yeah.
And I shared with you right before we started recording that me and Aspen went on a date last night and did, the life dinner. And one of the things that came out of that was just like we are eating out too much, just because of like the ease of it. Like if we're already out and running with the kids, like let's just grab Chick-fil-A. That's the easy thing to do. Not necessarily the best thing to do. But also, it's just like what you do there is, yes, you're still eating the meal as a family, which I think is good, but there's something special about just like our table is literally in the heart of our home. And I just, there's almost nothing more fulfilling for me as a dad than coming back after I've worked really hard all day at work and then sit down at the table and eat a nice meal with my wife and kiddos and even cooking it together, whatever it might be. But I just love the idea of holding that place as a sacred spot in your home for like, this is where we invest in our family. Yeah, that's super encouraging. Maybe speak for just a second on Ashley. I always say, I tell every guest that I have on here, behind every good father is a good wife. And so, I know Aspen for me has been such a blessing in so many ways. I mention this every time, but I call her the smoke alarm in our family because she's able to detect things far before I can. But maybe talk about Ashley's strengths and, what she means in your life and, how you guys are being teammates together as you're raising these 6 kiddos.
Well, my wife is super strong. She's really funny. She's got a big personality when you get to know her. She is, um, this is partly, female design, and part of it's just her unique design, but she feels everything.
Mm,
In other words, her capacity to sense the kids' emotions and her concern toward them over different things in their life is, I mean, it literally might be 100 times more keen than mine. I mean, she makes me feel like a big dumb idiot, like in regard to her emotional connection with our kids. Like, I just can't even believe the amount of weight that she
Mm,
carries, emotional thoughtfulness towards every one of our kids. It's really, geez, I'm kind of like actually being amazed anew right now, like as I think through that. So amazing gift for a large family,
mm,
because a lot of times in large families, kids get lost, and that's kind of dangerous, honestly, with a larger family where a kid can just get lost in the shuffle and feel insignificant, not as loved, not the favorite or whatever. And God has given her a unique gift that really, up to this point and prayerfully forward, has prevented anybody in our family from getting left behind.
mm.
She's just so thoughtful. So that's really an amazing gift. She also is a savage protector. She comes from, she's a pastor's kid, grew up the daughter of the pastor of the biggest Baptist church in town kind of deal. And there's a big testimony there, but she, from her mother, learned to be a protector of her family. And so she is also very protective of her family, extremely loyal. Um, and she's kind of all in on the adventure mindset too. I mean, like, we really are of one mind when it comes to Robin sticking together. We are our favorite people, and log in memories that are valuable and meaningful in raising tough, gritty, fun, loud, boisterous, adventurous kids.
Yeah. What a blessing to have a teammate you genuinely like, you light up talking about her, and
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
I encourage, like, any guy, just find a spouse that you genuinely enjoy doing life with.
Yeah.
Find someone that you can easily celebrate and champion and spur on, so love that, thanks for sharing. Um, Ashley, is she in education or administration? Does she do
She does. So
Okay,
she's involved at the Presbyterian preschool.
okay,
It's kind of a side gig, but she helps out over there. I think mainly because we've been there for a cajillion years. Yeah, she always joked how she was like the oldest mom, like twice as old as the other moms there. And so she just has found a little niche where she can serve and
that's fun.
knows exactly what she's doing. And but the great uh majority of her effort is applied to our family and keeping our home
Mm.
rolling.
I love that. I love that she can serve in that capacity while, um, still, serving the Robbins household for
Yeah,
what
it
they
works
need.
good.
Good. Question for you just in regard to the amount of kids that you have. I know that's a conversation for young families all the time. It's like Aspen and I always have this classic line of like, "Don't ask us how many kids we're having right after we just had a kid," because you're in the thick of it.
That's
But
right.
what if you don't mind, if it's private, don't share, but if you don't mind giving us a peek behind the curtain for conversations that you and Ashley had, just, like, as you would decide, "Let's continue to build our family and let's have another kiddo." Um, what do you feel like that's something that God put in your heart from the beginning? Like, did you know when you got married, "We want a big family," or was that something that God continued to reveal in you over time of, like, he wants us to have one more, he's entrusted us with one more?
I think we both came in wanting a big family. I mean, I've got 4 siblings, and I always joked that I wanted to beat my parents. And Ashley really, she's the youngest of 3, and obviously we've got affinity for working with and investing in young people anyway. But to be totally honest, I think the reason we have 6 is because we were trying to get Knox another brother,
Mhm.
and God had other plans. And so there was plenty of ups and downs in that journey, to be honest. But, a couple things we tell parents is, number one, doesn't matter how many kids you have, it always feels like a lot.
Mhm.
And we knew when we had our family. It's like I get, and probably in the same breath, it's like, well, I think we knew when we didn't have our whole family.
Yeah.
So there's just like this innate drive, like, well, we're not complete. And God used any number of factors to cause us to keep going. But, when we had our sixth, like we knew, like, oh, wow,
Yeah.
this is us. This is our family.
Mm.
And we knew.
Yeah. That, call it Holy Spirit, but just like the reality of like, when you hear that
Yeah.
cliche phrase all the time, but I
It's a
do
real
think
thing.
that's something to like lean into a bit. It's just like God will make it abundantly clear to you, whenever you're ready to
Yeah.
say this is officially the Robbins crew
Yeah.
or the McCandless crew.
We've
So
arrived. We're done.
yeah, exactly. Um, two more questions for you because I want to respect your time. One would be, you have you written a book before?
I have.
Okay, so transparently, I had no idea, and as I was doing research for my guest today, I was like, "Why have I not seen this book?" So, A, I need one, but what is that? Is that the only book you've written? What caused you to write it? What spurred you on? Can people get that somewhere?
Yeah. So the years are adding up. I guess I wrote it 9 years ago, but the book is called Dangerous Christian, and it is a book about intimacy with God in the midst of a spiritual battle.
Mm,
Um, and again, just for me, like I think my intimacy with God spiked when I realized just the urgency of, like, there are real evil forces
mhm,
that are moving against God's kingdom. And what that means for me is if I, instead of walking around oblivious like a zombie to that, when I choose to engage in that on a daily basis, it actually brings me a ton of life and a ton of purpose. And it makes me look at the world differently, and it makes me lean on the Lord differently. And so it was just, has always been just a powerful perspective for me personally. And it's kind of crazy. I dreamed about writing the book for 10 years, and I'm not a great writer. I mean, I wrote a bunch of chapters and threw them in the garbage. And then, one year, I can't even remember what year it was. It was like the January prayer showed up and said, okay, God, what do you have for me this year? And I felt like he gave me the green light. He actually gave me the title and the 4 sections
mhm.
of Dangerous Christian. And in 30 days, I had 60,000 words. Like it was just turn on the faucet.
Yeah,
And so I ended up hiring an amazing writer to help me, take my crummy version and make it readable and
yeah,
eloquent. And she did a great job, maintaining my voice. And so, yeah, it's out there on Amazon.
cool.
Pick up a few buys here and there, and
Yeah,
people, will bring it up randomly, which is cool.
that's
But
awesome.
I don't know, years ago, I got off social media, uh, and so I hardly even think about it except
Yeah.
for when it comes up. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. I can't wait to truly can't wait to read. I love reading books, and anytime I encounter someone like this, I'm always like, "What books are you reading?" And I happened to stumble across your book when it popped up whenever I was just doing some good old Google searching about
Yeah.
Shay Robbins, and I was like, "I've got to grab a copy. This is incredible." So
That's fun.
can't wait to dive into that. I end every podcast like this, and it's a weighty question, but this is, I think it's important for us to think about. But there's a Stoic philosophy, which they have some good things and they also have some bad things. But one of the good things that they talk about is memento mori, which means one day we will die. Um, Unfortunately, a lot of Stoics think that that's the end of the book. Obviously, as believers, we know that we're heading to an eternity with King Jesus. my question for you, with memento mori in mind, knowing that there will come a day where Shay Robbins and Lane McCandless are no longer here, what do you want your legacy to be? Whenever you think about your kids, not in an arrogant way of like, I want them to remember X, Y, or Z, but what do you think that you want your life to be defined by whenever your kids and your kids' kids and your kids' kids' kids talk about Shay Robbins?
Well, the easy answer is they are my legacy. I mean, I could just about care less about what anybody says about me or thinks about me. My number one priority is that my 6 kids walk with Jesus. And secondary to that is if they do get married, my desire is that their spouses would be doing the same. Um, and what's really cool is both sides of our family, Ashley's family and my parents, I would say there's cultural faith further back in the generations, but really, truly, they're in our family line on both sides. They are the first born again, sold out. This is the number one thing in my life, believers. And when they were raising us, they were just doing their best to figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, all of their kids are followers of Jesus. And we since then have had a foundation to build off of that has given us great advantage. It's heritage. And we are way ahead of them in regard to our understanding of God, our theology, our understanding of parenting, just education, resources, etc. And it's because they gave us a leg up. And so, just an Old Testament theme is that obedience equals blessing.
Mm-hmm.
And so my expectation is that my kids build off of the foundation that their grandparents laid and the advantages that they have in regard to their faith foundation, now being third generation, born again, sold out believers.
Mm.
And so, I think to get back to your question is my legacy is that they would just keep building off that, what their grandparents started.
That makes me really emotional, to be honest, hearing they are my legacy. That is one of the coolest lines I've ever heard, and I really appreciate that so much. Um, I just want
Why is it meaningful to you?
just because like you so many guys are chasing a legacy that is probably built on things that they think matter, in fatherhood, even accolades, like, I would say honest ambitions towards, like, I need to leave X amount of finances to provide for my family. I think those are all, like, understood, but just to hear, like, truly that your kids are your legacy, the thing that you've been most entrusted with on this side of eternity is your family.
Mm.
Like, and you have such a desire for your family to walk out their relationship with Jesus, to find and experience King Jesus, and then let everyone else also know about him, is just that's a cool that's a cool thought, and I wish
Mhm.
I just don't want people to miss that. I know that that's something that I'm walking away from today's conversation just going, yeah, if you do it right, it isn't about your name in lights at all. That's the opposite of a legacy that you should be out for. That's a byproduct by all means, but um, just to share mine as of right now, if someone were to ask me that question, I just want it to be faithfulness in every regard. I want to be known as I was faithful to my Lord and Savior. I was faithful to my spouse. I was faithful to my kids. I was faithful to my work. Um, but yeah, that's why it makes me emotional, just because I
Mhm.
think so many people are gonna miss it if they're not careful.
Yeah.
But well, I just want to end by speaking honor over you and say I truly think the world of you. You clearly you're having this conversation with me, but you have been constant from the day I met you. You have been, by every definition, an encourager, someone that's championed me and from our first conversation, whether you knew it would lead to now us being on the teaching team together and getting to do ministry and shoulder to shoulder, like you have such a gift of encouragement and coaching and bringing things out of people that maybe they didn't even know were in them to begin with. And so appreciate you so much. And like I always say, thanks for not just being a father, but being a good one.
Thank you, Lane.